3 truly disturbing Halloween horror stories. Welcome to DTC, Dark Timeless Creep, the place where the darkest, most chilling, and unsettling horror stories await to keep you on the edge of your seat. Brace yourself for an unforgettable experience as we bring you 3 truly disturbing Halloween horror stories that will send shivers down your spine. Each tale unveils a part of a shadowy world where unexplainable horrors unfold, threatening the peace of those brave enough to encounter them. Do you have the courage to step into the unknown? Stay tuned and prepare for a journey through terror as we dive into these bone-chilling stories. Story 1, Halloween Night and an Unexpected Encounter. It was October 31st, a crisp Halloween night that everyone looks forward to. The air was filled with the excitement of trick-or-treaters, and the streets were lined with haunted house decorations, glowing pumpkins, and eerie sound effects from every corner. For my family, Halloween was always a time for fun. It was a time when we could get together, share laughter, and of course, enjoy all the candy. At that point, our family was still intact, and my siblings and I had a routine. Half of us went with our mother, and the other half went with our father. I was going with my father that night, and I was thrilled. We were going to a neighborhood known for its grand Halloween displays. This was always the highlight of the year. The homes there went all out, turning their yards into eerie graveyards, spooky forests, and haunted mansions. I even convinced a friend of mine, Aubrey, to join us. Most of my other friends couldn't make it, but Aubrey was ready for the adventure. She was always the brave one, ready to take on whatever spooky encounters Halloween might throw our way. As we drove through the neighborhood, we were in awe of the decorations. The streets were alive with children in costumes, and the whole atmosphere felt magical, until, of course, everything took a dark turn. Aubrey and I wandered off ahead of my father and my younger sister. The energy of the night had me bouncing around, eager to collect as much candy as I could. I remember running ahead, looking at the glowing jack-o'-lanterns and spooky figures decorating the yards. Aubrey had fallen behind a little, but I didn't think much of it. I was too caught up in the excitement. As we walked deeper into the neighborhood, we began to notice something unsettling. The usual buzz of other children trick-or-treating faded into the background. The streets were quieter now, and the air felt heavier. It was almost as if the energy had shifted. Aubrey and I kept walking, discussing school, our friends, and how much candy we hoped to score. But something was off. The road felt strangely deserted. There were no other kids around, and the silence that surrounded us was eerie. Then we heard it. A scraping sound. It wasn't like the usual Halloween noises you hear, creaking doors, distant music, or people laughing. This was something different, something sinister. It was the sound of something being dragged across the pavement. At first I thought maybe it was just a prank, maybe someone dragging a fake body for a Halloween display, but the sound grew louder and closer, and I could feel my heart rate increase. Aubrey heard it too, and we both turned around. That's when we saw him. At first glance, he just looked like another Halloween character. He was dressed in a traditional clown costume, brightly colored with exaggerated makeup and a big red nose. But there was something wrong about him. His face didn't have the typical cheerful, goofy expression you expect from a clown. Instead, it was twisted, sinister, with a grotesque grin that stretched far too wide. His eyes, empty, hollow, sent a shiver down my spine. The clown didn't speak. He didn't call out to us, ask for candy, or even make a sound. He just stood there, watching us, holding a large, twisted, staff-like object in his hand. The way he moved was unsettling, slow, deliberate, as though he was calculating every step. I tried to brush it off as part of some elaborate costume, but my instinct screamed that something was wrong. Without saying a word, I grabbed Aubrey's arm and started to walk faster. My heart was racing, and every part of my body told me to run. But Aubrey, ever the brave one, kept glancing back, trying to figure out what this clown was doing. The atmosphere was thick with tension. We had wandered so far from the others, and the streets were so silent that every sound seemed magnified. And then something happened that made it all too real. The clown began walking toward us, his pace slow at first, then picking up speed. A chill ran down my spine. I told Aubrey we needed to get back to my father, but before we could take another step, the clown's movements turned aggressive. He didn't walk, he ran toward us, his laughter filling the air. It was high-pitched and distorted, a sound so unnatural that it made my blood run cold. Aubrey and I turned and bolted down the street, not looking back, not caring where we were going, just desperate to escape. We ran as fast as we could, the sound of the clown's footsteps behind us growing louder. My breath was ragged and my legs felt like they were going to give out, but I kept running. We turned corners, not paying attention to where we were headed, just focusing on getting away. The street we ran down was eerily quiet. No one else around, no cars, no lights, just us and the clown. I didn't dare look behind me. The sound of his footsteps was all I needed to know he was getting closer. He was gaining on us. Aubrey's fear was palpable. We had both been terrified before, but nothing had prepared us for the reality of being chased by a clown in the dark, alone. The road was steep and narrow, and as we rounded the final corner, I saw the lights of the main street in the distance. I could see the houses lit up, children still trick-or-treating, the sounds of laughter and excitement. We pushed ourselves harder, crossing the street without looking both ways, too frantic to care about traffic. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the pursuit stopped. The sound of the clown's footsteps was gone. The laugh, once so close and menacing, faded into the distance. Aubrey and I stopped running, breathless and terrified. We looked behind us, expecting to see him standing right there, but the street was empty. There was no sign of the clown anywhere. We made it back to my father, shaking with fear, our hearts still pounding. We told him everything. The clown, the chase, the laughter that echoed in our ears. Dad, though worried, believed us. After all, the fear in our voices and the panic in our eyes were undeniable. But to this day, I can't shake that feeling. The clown, the way he moved, the sound of his laughter, it's something I'll never forget. Maybe it was just a prank gone wrong, a messed up costume, or maybe something far darker. Aubrey and I would talk about that night for years, wondering if what we saw was real or if we had imagined it in the midst of fear. But the fear, that was all too real. So what can we take from this terrifying encounter? Is it just a Halloween prank gone too far? Or is there something deeper, something more sinister lurking in the dark corners of our world? One thing is certain, our fear of the unknown is real. Halloween, with its dark streets and creepy characters, brings out something primal in all of us. We are reminded of the things that go bump in the night, the things we can't explain, and the things that, once seen, we can never forget. And what about you? Have you ever had an encounter that made your heart race, made you question what's real and what's not? Share your stories with us in the comments below. Let's keep the Halloween spirit alive and remind each other of the dangers that might be lurking right around the corner. Stay safe, and remember, sometimes the scariest things are the ones you can't see. Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC Dark Timeless Creeps and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Number 2, Halloween Night, Strange Sounds from the Forest. It was the fall of 2019, and Halloween that year would change everything for me. I was 16, and while I had always experienced strange things, glimpses of shadows, hearing voices without anyone around, feeling like something was watching me, I thought they were just part of who I was. I had grown used to the paranormal, and it had become just another strange facet of my life. But on this particular Halloween, everything I thought I knew was shattered. That night, a friend invited me and a few other girls to her first and only Halloween party. We were excited to go trick-or-treating, but nothing unusual happened during that part of the night. We simply ran into a couple of school friends, exchanged pleasantries, and went about our business. Afterward, the older girls, including me, gathered in my friend's room to relax, while the younger girls went into her sister's room to play. We swapped candy, chatted about our costumes, and everything seemed normal. As the night wore on, the air grew colder, and a strange feeling began to creep over me. There was something unsettling in the atmosphere that I couldn't quite shake. The night was darker than usual, and as I looked outside, the trees swayed ominously in the wind, casting strange shadows on the ground. It was almost as if the world had become eerily still. We decided to step outside for a bit. The younger girls were on the swings in the backyard, while the older girls stayed by the porch, chatting away. But despite the laughter, the cold began to gnaw at me, and I felt this undeniable urge to go back inside. Something was off. I grabbed a friend, and we both stepped into the house, but just as we closed the door, we heard a blood-curdling scream. The scream came from the backyard, and in an instant, one of the younger girls came barreling through the door, running past us like a blur. She was visibly shaken, and soon after, her sister ran in right behind her, calling out to her. The rest of us rushed to gather in my friend's room, unsure of what had just happened. We were all speechless, the fear in the air almost palpable. A moment later, my friend, who was visibly pale and panicked, came into the room. She grabbed me urgently, her face stricken with terror. "We need to go upstairs," she whispered, her voice trembling. I had no idea what was going on, but her fear was enough to make me follow her. When we reached the upstairs room, my friend explained why I needed to help. She knew I had experience with paranormal occurrences, and she felt I was the only one who could help the younger girl who had screamed. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I followed her, my nerves on edge. The girl sat in the corner of the room, huddled in a ball, trembling uncontrollably. The moment I stepped closer, I could hear the faint sobs of someone trying to suppress their fear. Her entire body shook as she looked up at me, her eyes wide with terror. I gently took her hand, and she seemed to relax just a bit, as if my presence was somehow comforting. Through choked sobs, the girl explained what had happened. She had been playing on the swings in the backyard when a sudden unease gripped her. She jumped off the swing and wandered toward the edge of the woods, where the air felt thick with something she couldn't explain. Her little sister had followed her, asking if she was okay, but the older girl had shushed her. Then she heard a low growl, almost like an animal warning her, but when she asked her sister if she heard it too, she said no. Despite feeling a deep sense of fear, the girl was drawn closer to the forest. As she peered into the darkness, she saw two glowing red eyes staring back at her. They weren't just reflections from an animal. These eyes seemed to be alive, watching her with an intelligence that sent chills down her spine. The growl grew louder, and it wasn't just an animal noise. It sounded otherworldly. Her heart pounded in her chest as the air turned ice cold, and she felt as though something was right behind her, ready to pounce. Terrified, she screamed and bolted toward the house as fast as she could, not daring to look back. As she recounted the story, I felt a cold shiver creep down my spine. I could feel the fear radiating from her, and the more she spoke, the more I became convinced that something wasn't right. There was no logical explanation for what she had experienced. Those glowing eyes, what could they be? Could it have been an animal? Perhaps. But the growl she described wasn't normal. It didn't fit any earthly creature. I looked around the room, my senses on high alert. There was something in the air, something dark and oppressive, a feeling that was growing stronger by the minute. The atmosphere felt thick, as if the very walls were closing in on us. The house felt different, wrong somehow. After the girl calmed down a bit, we went back downstairs, but the feeling didn't go away. The house felt heavier, like we weren't alone. The sounds of the night outside seemed muffled, and even the usual creaks and groans of the house had become more pronounced. I couldn't shake the sensation that something or someone was watching us. As the night drew on, the group tried to resume some sense of normalcy, but no one was really talking much. It was as if we all instinctively knew that something else was there, just beyond our vision, lurking in the shadows. I couldn't help but glance at the darkened window, half expecting to see those red eyes peering back at me. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. Was it a figment of the girl's imagination? A manifestation of fear? Perhaps, but I don't think so. The fear I felt in that room was too real, too tangible. Those red eyes, the growl, they weren't something that could be easily dismissed as a bad dream or a trick of the mind. Whatever it was, it left an impression on me that I can't shake. Since that night, I've experienced more strange occurrences, but nothing has been as chilling as the terror that filled that room. It was a reminder that there are things in this world that we can't explain, things that exist in the shadows, just waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The lesson I learned that Halloween is simple. There are forces in the world that we don't fully understand. We can try to rationalize them, but some things defy logic. Fear, when it's real, can open doors to things we're not prepared to face. Whether it was the paranormal or something else, the events of that night changed me. It taught me to always respect the unknown and to never dismiss the feeling that something, someone, might be watching you from the darkness. As I reflect on that night, I can't help but wonder, is it truly over, or is it just waiting for the right time to come back? Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC Dark Timeless Creeps and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Number 3. The Strange Halloween Journey. Since we were kids, my younger brother and I have always been fascinated by the forest near our home. It's a dense, mysterious place with towering old trees, winding streams, and secret paths we had explored countless times. But there was one part of the forest we had never dared to enter, a section that always gave us an eerie feeling, as if it didn't belong to this world. On one Halloween evening, we decided it was time to explore it. The late afternoon light painted everything with a golden, almost mystical hue. The leaves were tinged with red and yellow, creating a beautiful but unsettling image. The wind was gentle, but there were no birds singing, no small creatures rustling in the underbrush. Everything was unnaturally quiet, like the forest was holding its breath, watching us. Should we turn back? My younger brother Tuan asked nervously. He was always the more cautious one. Why be scared? It's just a forest, I replied, trying to reassure him, though I didn't feel entirely at ease myself. But I didn't want to let Tuan's fear take over, so I pushed forward. We ventured deeper into the woods, where the sunlight couldn't quite reach, leaving everything cast in shadow. Every step we took felt heavier, as though the air itself was thickening. Tuan, who had been walking behind me, had grown silent, his gaze constantly darting around, like he was searching for something hidden in the darkness. Suddenly, there was a loud sound from behind us, a sharp crack like a branch snapping. We froze. I turned around, but all I could see were trees swaying gently in the wind. Tuan looked at me, his eyes wide with fear. "I swear I heard something," he whispered. "It was probably an animal. Don't worry," I said, though I wasn't as sure as I sounded. Something about the silence that followed felt wrong, like the forest was watching us, waiting. We continued walking, but the deeper we went, the more the air felt charged, thick with tension. Then, through the dense trees, I saw it, a shadow darting quickly across our path. It was so fast I couldn't make out what it was, but it was undeniably there. "Did you see that? That shadow!" I gasped. Tuan glanced in the direction I was pointing, but there was nothing there. "There's nothing there," he said, his voice trembling. But I knew what I saw. Whatever it was not just a trick of the light. We needed to leave, but every time we tried to turn back, it felt like something was pulling us deeper into the forest. It was as if we couldn't escape, even if we wanted to. Then, out of nowhere, a gust of wind rushed through, colder than any wind I had ever felt. The trees shook violently, their branches creaking under the force. It was as if the forest itself was alive and it wanted us to stay. And then we saw it. At first, it was just a blur, a figure, tall and thin, moving between the trees, blending with the shadows. But as it came closer, I could see more clearly. It wasn't human. It wasn't even an animal. It was something otherworldly, like a being made of smoke and wind, with glowing eyes that burned like fire. Tuan screamed, but his voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence. We froze, unable to move. The figure glided closer, its form shifting and flickering like it wasn't quite solid. The air around it shimmered, cold and heavy. Tuan screamed, but his voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence. We froze, unable to move. The figure glided closer, its form shifting and flickering like it wasn't quite solid. The air around it shimmered, cold and heavy. I wanted to run, but my feet felt like they were stuck to the ground. The figure continued to advance, its eyes locked onto us, and the forest seemed to close in around us, as if we were being drawn into some kind of trap. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was watch as it came closer and closer. Then, in an instant, it vanished, gone, just like that. We stood there trembling in the dark, the silence of the forest swallowing us whole. For a moment, everything seemed normal again, like nothing had happened, but I knew what I had seen, what we had both seen. "Was that real?" Tuan asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," I replied, my heart still racing. "But we need to leave, now." We didn't wait another second. We turned and ran, the forest seeming to chase us, the trees groaning as if alive. The wind howled around us, and I felt like something was still behind us, watching, waiting. Even when we finally reached the edge of the forest and the safety of home, the feeling didn't go away. It lingered, as if the forest had marked us somehow. And every Halloween since that night, I can't shake the feeling that it's still out there, waiting, watching. I wonder if we really escaped, or if the forest has claimed us and we just don't know it yet. As the darkness deepens and the stories grow more unsettling, we venture deeper into the unknown together. Each chilling tale brings us closer to the eerie truths lurking just beyond the veil of reality. The terror doesn't stop here, it only gets worse. Subscribe to DTC Dark Timeless Creeps now and stay on the edge of your seat. You won't want to miss what's lurking in the shadows next. Hit that notification bell and prepare for the next terrifying chapter. Remember, in the world of DTC, the creeps are always waiting, and they never rest. iMoon